on Facebook. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining. So today we are joined by our guest speaker, Shyamvallabhha, Gopi, who was previously with us a few weeks ago. So thank you for joining us again, Mataji, and over to you.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. And what I'll do is I'll start off with a quick kirtan because we've not got the introduction today. So Gopi Yashoda Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Madhava Kunda Bihari Madhava Punjabi Hari Gopi Jana Hari Yashoda Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Radha Gopile Nanda Radha Gopile Nanda Shri Radhe Jaya Sita Rama Shanana Jaya Sita Rama Hanuman Jaya Paranitai Paranitai Jaya Paranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Hari Bol. So today I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah. It's not my computer's not letting me share the screen. Okay. Okay. So today we'll be discussing the 10th chapter of Canto 1, and it's titled The Departure of Lord Krishna from Dwarka. So now before I start, you could follow along. I wanted to seek blessings from the previous acharyas, the seniors present on this call, and from everybody, all the Vaishnavas, that I may say something useful today. So yeah, seeking your blessings. So Om Jnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamshta Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Itam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vaijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhamritamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayan Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devi Saraswati Vyasam Tota Jayamudiraye Shinvitam Sakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Hridayante Stohi Bhadrani Nidonoti Suritsitam Nastapai Payasabhatischu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. So yeah, thank you to Amanda for pointing out that you could see. Is it the smaller screen you could see, or Amanda?
We can see like a screen and then the next slide next to it.
You're on mute.
Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna try and share another. I'm not sure why it does that. I might wait. I'll share my other screen. Okay, share it. Is this better?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much for joining today. This isn't.
No, we just saying prayers.
Okay, some technical difficulty here. Okay. Okay, 1 second. Okay, now, but is it better? So I'm just gonna go across. So thank you so much for joining. Sorry about the technical difficulty. So the chapter 10 of Canto 1 of the Canto 1 is titled The Departure of Lord Krishna from Dwarka, and it's divided into 5 sections. So verses 1 to 6 describe the kingdom of Mataji Yudhishthir. So, and in verses 1 to 3 is re-established by Krishna that and Yudhishthir ruled with perfect knowledge. It describes how Yudhishthir was the perfect king. And then in verses 4 to 6, it describes how under the perfect king Yudhishthir, there was a prosperous kingdom and happy subjects. And then verses 7 to 14 describes the intensity of the Lord Krishna's attractive influence. So after staying so in verses 7 and 8, it describes how after staying for a few months, Krishna then plans to leave Dwarka after pacifying his relatives. And in verses 9 to 14, there's unbearable separation of Parikshit and others. And then in verses 15 to 19, Lord Krishna was appropriately honored. And he was honored, and a description of this is given in verses 15 to 18, where musical instruments, flower showers, umbrella, fan, and by the Brahmanas' benedictions. And then, so I've got this wrong. So in verses 20 to 31, the Hastinapur ladies discuss the Lord's glories. So in verses 20, pleasing talks glorifying Krishna are given, which are more attractive than the Vedic hymns, and we'll describe why, and we'll discuss why. In verses 21 to 22, Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. It established Krishna as the original personality of Godhead and empowers Prakriti for creation. In 23 and 24, the devotees experience the Lord's form and describe his pastimes. In 25, the Lord descends into the material world to punish the miscreants. In verses 26 to 30, the Yadu dynasty, Mathura, Dwarka, queens and gopis are glorified. And then in the final 4 to 5 verses, it describes how the Lord proceeds for Dwarka, so his journey to Dwarka, and how Yudhishthira arranged defense for Krishna's protection and accompanied him for a distance. And then finally, how the Lord passes through various provinces in that way. So verses 1 to 6 describe the kingdom of Mataji Yudhishthir. And so in verse 1, we see that Sri Shaunaka Rishi is asking, after killing the aggressors, how did Mataji Yudhishthir, the greatest of all religious men, assisted by his brothers, rule his subjects? Surely he could enjoy the kingdom unrestrictedly. So, and Sukadev Goswami's reply to this is given in verse 2. And he says, the Kuru dynasty was exhausted by the bamboo fire of anger, and Lord Krishna was very pleased by re-establishing Mataji Yudhishthir in his own kingdom. So in the purport, it's an extract from the purport, and Srila Prabhupada describes that this world is compared to a forest fire caused by the cohesion of bamboo bushes. Such a forest fire takes place automatically, for bamboo cohesion occurs without external cause. Similarly, in the material world, the wrath of those who want to lord it over material nature interacts, and the fire of war takes place, exhausting the unwanted population. Such fires or wars take place, and the Lord has nothing to do with them, But because he wants to maintain the creation, he desires the mass of people to follow the right path of self-realization, which enables the living beings to enter into the kingdom of God. The Lord wants us to come back home, back to him. And he wants to seize the threefold pangs of misery. And his whole plan of creation is made in this way. And if you don't do this, the consequence is you have to suffer, our senses suffer in the material world, inflicted by the illusionary energy or Maya. And therefore, Krishna, the reason why Krishna wanted Yudhishthira to be king, and therefore wanted the war to take place, the war to take place between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, was because he wanted his bona fide representative to rule over the world. So Lord Krishna desired to establish this sort of regime, and he wanted to kill the unwanted persons who had nothing to do with his plan. So as we know, the reasons why Krishna comes to this world, Paritaya sadhunam vinashaya chudukshritam dharma samstaphanataya sambhavami yuge yuge, to re-establish religion and dharma, and to for his devotees, to please his devotees, and also to destroy the miscreants. So in this case, the battle was fought because Duryodhana wasn't a righteous king. And then later on, we'll discuss how if the ruler of the world is a fool, the citizens suffer as well. But we'll discuss that later. And the battle of Kurukshetra was fought according to the plan of the Lord, so that undesirable persons could get out of this world and a peaceful kingdom under his devotee could be established. And this is why Yudhishthira was, why Krishna was satisfied when Yudhishthira was on the throne, and the seedling of the dynasty of Kuru. So in verses 3, it describes how Yudhishthira, enlightened by Bhishma and Krishna, without any ideology of his own. So this is very important. When we approach Krishna, we should try and not have our own ideology. And if we do this, like Yudhishthira, all our misgivings will be eradicated. So Maharaj Yudhishthira ruled over the earth and followed by his brothers, but he was the ideal king or representative of Lord Krishna to rule over the kingdom, because he was instructed by Bhishma Dev and the infallible Lord also, and therefore he had full knowledge of everything in perfection. Why did he have full knowledge of everything? It's described Prabhupada describes this nicely in his purport, where he says, the conception of one world state can only be fulfilled if we can follow the infallible authority. An imperfect human being cannot create an ideology acceptable to everyone. Only the perfect and the infallible can create a program which is applicable at every place and can be followed by all in the world. It is this person who rules, and not the impersonal government. If the person is perfect, the government is perfect. If the person is a fool, the government is a fool's paradise. This is the law of nature. So I've sort of given you the answer, but if we try and when we try and accomplish things without Krishna, because we have 4 defects, so we are illusioned, we have the tendencies to teach others, are limited by imperfect senses, and are sure to commit mistakes. So this makes it impossible for us, or a king, or prime minister, to rule the world or government in a way that everyone is satisfied, like Yudhishthira did. Yeah. And so, because Yudhishthira was following the instructions of Krishna and Bhishma, there was a prosperous kingdom. There was sufficient rainfall, profuse production from the earth, happy cows that moistened the ground with their milk, and profuse tax paid by the rivers, ocean, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs. So it was like a perfect kingdom. And the citizens were happy. So the citizens were happy, right? Are all the citizens, are we all happy at the moment under our government? No, right? Because either we've got high taxes, which bother us, or other policies that they don't really work for everybody. They may be good for the rich, but they may not be good for the poor, or they may not be good for the middle class. It never satisfies everybody. So, but in the kingdom of Mataji Yudhishthira, all the citizens were happy. No one was disturbed by anxieties, diseases, or excessive heat and cold caused by nature, other living beings, or their own bodies and minds. So actually it's described that actually in this age, there's a lot of enmity towards poor animals. So a lot of slaughter of animals and meat eating. And therefore the poor creatures are always anxious. And the reaction of the poor animals is being forced on human society. And therefore there's always the strain of cold or hot war between men, individually, collectively, or nationally. Actually, animal killing or cow slaughter is the reason behind famines and natural disasters like tsunamis, that is described in the Bhagavatam as well, earthquakes, etc. So it's clearly something that is really harmful to everybody. So, but at the time of Mataji Yudhishthira, there were no nations, although there were different subordinate states. The whole world was united, and the supreme head, being a trained king like Yudhishthira, kept all the inhabitants free from anxiety, disease, and excessive heat and cold. They were not only economically well-to-do, but also physically fit and undisturbed by supernatural power, by enmity from other living beings, and by disturbance of bodily and mental agonies. Yeah, I really want this sort of kingdom. I wish the earth was like this at the moment, but unfortunately not. So in verses 5 to 6, it presents the success to achieve, it describes that the secret to achieving success in anything we do is to take refuge under the protection of the Supreme Lord and Guru. So if you want to achieve success in anything, we should seek refuge under Guru and Krishna. So since Mataji Yudhishthira was under the protection of the Ajita, which means the infallible Lord, so that the properties of the Lord, namely the rivers, oceans, hills, forests, were all pleased, and they used to supply their respective quota of taxes to the king. So like I say, the secret to success is to take refuge under the protection of the Supreme Lord. Without his sanction, nothing can be possible. I can't speak without Krishna's sanction. I can't move my finger without Krishna's sanction. I can't wake up in the morning without Krishna letting me open my eyes. So when we think that we're in control, we're really foolish to think this. Krishna is always sanctioning all our actions and activities. So to make economic development by our own endeavors and the strength of tools and machineries is not all. The sanction of the Supreme Lord must be there. Otherwise, despite all instrumental arrangements, everything will be unsuccessful. The ultimate cause of success is the Deva, the Supreme. Kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira knew perfectly well that the king is the agent of the Supreme Lord to look after the welfare of the mass of people. Actually, the state belongs to the Supreme Lord. The rivers, oceans, forests, hills, drugs, etc. are not creations of man. They are all creations of the Supreme, and the living being is allowed to make use of the property of the Lord for the service of the Lord. So it's this idea of using everything we have for the service of the Lord. And this is how we make this material world spiritual. That even whilst living in this material world, if we could use everything we have for the service of the Lord, we can make it Vaikuntha or Golok, like Vrindavan. So there is enough of everything by the will of the Lord, and we can make proper use of things to live comfortably without enmity between man and man, or man and animal, or man and nature. The control of the Lord is everywhere, and if the Lord is pleased, every part of nature will be pleased. The river will flow profusely to fertilize the land. The oceans will supply sufficient quantities of minerals, pearls, and jewels. The forest will supply sufficient wood, drugs, and vegetables, and the seasonal changes will effectively help produce fruits and flowers in profuse quantity. So this artificial way of living that we have today, depending on factories and tools, can render so-called happiness only to a limited number at a cost of billions. So, because the king was pious and obedient to the Lord and sages, because he was no one's enemy, and because he was a recognized agent of the Lord, and therefore protected by him, all the citizens under the king's protection were, so to speak, directly protected by the Lord and his authorized agents. Unless one is pious and recognized by the Lord, therefore, he cannot make others happy who are under his care. There is full cooperation between man and God and man and nature. And this conscious cooperation between man and God and man and nature, as exemplified by King Yudhishthira, can bring about happiness, peace, and prosperity in the world. And this attitude of exploiting one another, the custom of the day, will only bring misery. A key verse describing how actually everything belongs to Krishna and how we should give it back to everything. We should always give back everything to Krishna, and we should only take what we need as opposed to a want. Is this verse of the Sri Upanishad, verse 1. Sorry about the error of the reference. It goes, Ishavasam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita magidakasya svitanam. So everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So, what is the difference between a need and a want? So a need is something necessary to live and function, like food, clothing, shelter, education, and healthcare. But a want is something that can improve your quality of life, but is not necessary for survival. So a want is basically our material desires. Like me saying, I want the latest iPhone, I want the latest Samsung because my friend has it. I want a new car. Not because my car is broken down, it's just because I want to show it off to others. Or I want to keep getting promoted. I want to be the CEO of a company, you know, or I want a bigger house, bigger than my friend, bigger than my relatives, you know, so everybody could glorify me, right? You know, so a need, the difference between a need and a want is that a need is limited, whereas a want is unlimited. Many a times we say you have unlimited desires. So say if you're never satisfied actually. So say if I got a promotion, so I'm currently looking for a promotion at work, but that promotion might not make me happy, you know, because I might not like my new team maybe, or it might become more stressful. And then therefore you want to, it's you're never satisfied, or you want to get another promotion, you know, it's like, it's never ending, you know. Yeah, you have money and you want to make more money. It's often the case that I don't know if you knew it, let's say when you have, so there was this, when you have money you want more money, and you find that rich people are often find it hard to give for that reason. So sometimes, not everybody, you know. So a need is a necessity, a need is essential, and a want is inessential. A need may remain consistent over time, but a want may change over time. And the non-fulfillment of a need may result in the onset of disease, but the non-fulfillment of a want may result in disappointment. So that's the difference. So material civilization is a great stumbling block for material spiritual advancement. Such material advancement entangles the living being in the bondage of a material body, followed by all sorts of material miseries. Such material advancement is called anatta, or things not wanted. Actually, this is so. In the present context of material advancement, one uses lipstick at the cost of 50 cents, and there are so many unwanted things which are all products of the material conception of life. By diverting attention to so many unwanted things, human energy is put without achievement of spiritual realization, the prime necessity of human life. So that's taken from Prabhupada's Purport, Canto 1, chapter 8, verse 27. So verses 7 to 14 then describes the intensity of Lord Krishna's attractive influence. So Lord Krishna resided in Hastinapur for a few months to oblige the request of Mataji Yudhishthira, who was aggrieved, to show special mercy to Bhishmadev, and to please his own sister Subhadra, who had lost her only son Abhimanyu. He was just married to Uttara, the mother of Maharaj Parikshit. And in verse 8, he then takes permission from Yudhishthira to leave Hastinapur. And when he does this, you notice his behavior. He exchanges obeisances and he embraces all his loved ones. And then he mounts the charioteer. So he offers respects to Maharaj Yudhishthira because he's older than him, and bows down at his feet, even though he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He embraces Bhima and Arjun because they're of the same age. But then Nakul and Sahadev bow down before Krishna because they are younger than him. So actually, although Krishna is God, he leads by example of the correct etiquette for us to follow towards those older than us, the same age as us, and younger than us. He's always setting the right examples for us. So in verses 9 to 10, so as you can imagine, Subhadra, Draupadi, Kunti, Uttara, Gandhar, Dhritarashtra, Yuyusu, Kripacharya, Nakul, Sahadev, Bhimasena, Domya, and Satyavati are so much, they're feeling so much separation from Krishna already that they nearly faint. So in verses 11 to 12, it describes this intolerable separation. So the intelligent, freed from bad association, cannot give up hearing the Lord's glories, even having heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas, who are intimately observed in Krishna, are seeing, touching, conversing, sleeping, sitting and eating with him, tolerate separation from him? You can just imagine. For example, after Krishna's separation from Vrindavan and the innocent rural Carol boys, girls, ladies and others, they all felt shock throughout their lives. And the separation of Radharani, the most beloved coward girl, is beyond expression. Once they met at Kurukshetra during a solar eclipse, and the feeling which was expressed by them was heart-rendering. They weren't satisfied. Because Krishna was displaying his, he wasn't in the Madhurya rasa, but he was in a, he was like a Kshatriya, but not what the gopis were used to in Vrindavan. So this verse says, Sat Sangam Muktas Dusango Itam Nutsahate Buddha Petyamanam Yasunyasya Shakredakani Rojanam Tasmimyasta Diya Vartha Saharan Viraham Katam Darshana Sparsa Samlampa Sayanasyan Bhojanahe. So in verses 11 to 12, the secret to permanent satisfaction and peace, it describes that the secret to permanent satisfaction and peace is to render service unto Krishna and to take shelter of the devotees as opposed to serving our perfected senses. So our position actually is, a constitutional position, is that of service and serving the superior. And we are forced, even if you don't want to serve Krishna, we're forced to serve someone, we're forced to serve our boss at work. So either way, we're forced to serve our family. So either way, we're in this, we're serving. We'd rather serve Krishna, right? And in serving our senses, we are never tired. And even though we may be tired, the illusory energy purposely forces us to do so without being satisfied. And that way, there's no end to such sense gratificatory business, and the conditioned soul we become entangled in such servitude without hope of release. So how do we get release from sense gratification? It is described in this purport is that we need to get the association of pure devotees. And by such association, we are gradually promoted to the transcendental consciousness, and thus we can know our eternal position, which is to render service unto the Lord, and not to the perverted senses, like I said. A mature society, for example, an example of this is mature society, friendship and love, and all phases of lust, home, country, family, society, wealth, and all sorts of collieries are all causes of bondage in the mature world, where the threefold miseries of life are concomitant factors. So by associating with pure devotees and by hearing them submissively, attachment for material enjoyment becomes slackened, and attraction for hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord become prominent. And once they will go on progressively without stoppage, Prabhupada describes, like fire in gunpowder. It is said that Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is so transcendentally attractive that even those who are self-satisfied by self-realization and are factually liberated from all material bondage also become devotees of the Lord. So in verses 13, all the hearts of the Gopi, of the residents of Hastinapur melt in affection. So they're looking upon Krishna with unblinking eyes, and moving perplexity. So Krishna is naturally attracted to all living beings. Once the relationship with Krishna is slightly reviewed, the conditioned soul becomes mad after his association. This association is made possible not only by personal contact with the Lord, but also by association with his name, fame, form, and quality, as this is non-different from Krishna, as he is the absolute. And in verse 14, it describes that, the women are trying to block the tears because they think that will result in inauspiciousness at the time of Krishna's departure. And this is caused by anxiety and affection for Krishna. So the description goes, there were hundreds of ladies in the palace of Hastinapur. All of them were affectionate to Krishna. All of them were relatives also. When they saw that Krishna was going away from the palace for his native place, they were very anxious for him. And as usual, tears began to roll down their cheeks. They thought at the same time that tears at that moment might be a cause of misfortune for Krishna. Therefore, they wanted to check them. This was very difficult for them because the tears could not be checked. Therefore, they smeared the tears in their eyes, and their hearts throbbed. Therefore, ladies who were the wives and daughters-in-laws of those who died in the battlefield never came in direct contact with Krishna, for all of them heard of him and his great activities, and thus they thought of him, talked of him, his name, fame, etc., and became affectionate also, like those who were in direct contact. Therefore, directly or indirectly, anyone thinks of Krishna, talks of Krishna, or worships Krishna, becomes attached to him. This includes when we do this, we'll become attached to Krishna. Same. So because Krishna is the absolute, there's no difference between his name, form, quality, etc. Our intimate relationship with Krishna can be confidentially revived by talking of, hearing of, or remembering him. It is done due to the spiritual potency. And what's the key method in Kali Yuga of reviving? What's the key method? It's the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And there's no other way but the chanting of the holy name that we could go back to Godhead in Kali Yuga. So in verses 15 to 19, so Krishna is appropriately honored. So while the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapur, different types of drums like the mridanga, thola, nagara, dunduri, and dundubi, and flutes of different types like the veena, gomukha, and beri, all sounded together to show him honor. The Kuru woman climbed on the roofs of the palace to see Krishna, and smiling with affection and shyness, showered flowers upon him. This incident from the mild period proves that the ladies of the palace observed restricted association with men, and so instead of coming down in the open air where Lord Krishna and the others were assembled, the ladies of the palace went up on the top of the palace and from there paid respects to Lord Krishna by showering flowers. So in this purport, it nicely describes how shyness is actually the beauty of woman, actually, or the fair, in this case, the fair sex, first that. So why is this the case? It says shyness is a particularly extra natural beauty of the fair sex, and it commands respect from the opposite sex. This shyness is a gift of nature to the fair sex, and it enhances their beauty and prestige. Even if they are of a less important family, or even if they are less attractive, we have practical experience of this fact. A sweeper woman commands more respect by respectful gentlemen simply by manifesting a lady's shyness compared to a half-naked lady in the street who we won't respect. But a shy sweeper's wife commands respect from all. So the material beauty of a woman is an illusion because actually the body is made of earth, water, fire, air, etc. But because there is the association of the living spark with matter, it appears to be beautiful. No one is attracted by an earthen doll, even if it is most perfectly prepared to attract the attention of others, right? So the dead body has no beauty because no one will accept the dead body of a so-called beautiful woman. Therefore, the conclusion is that the spiritual spark is beautiful, and because of the soul's beauty, one is attracted by the beauty of the outward body. The Vedic wisdom therefore forbids us to be attracted by false beauty, but because we are now in the darkness of ignorance, the Vedic civilization allows very restricted mixing of women and men. So it's said that woman is considered to be fire and man is considered to be the butter. The butter must melt in the association with fire, and therefore they may be brought together only when it is necessary. And shyness is a check to unrestricted mixing. It is nature's gift and it must be utilized. So in verses 17, so at that time when Krishna is leaving, Arjun holds up an umbrella which has a handle of jewels embodied with laces and pearls for Krishna. And then Uddhava and Satyaki found the Lord, Madhupati, who appeared splendid. And then at this point, the Brahmanas are bestowing blessings on Krishna and uttering benedictions, which it says which were unbefitting to the Lord because he's at the absolute nirgunasya, but was also benefiting for him because he had now taken the role of a human being. So at places there were sounds of benediction aiming at the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The benedictions were fitting in the sense that the Lord was playing the part of a human being, as if a cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira, but they were also unfitting because the Lord is absolute and has nothing to do with any kind of material relatives. So Krishna is Nirgun, or has no material qualities in him, but is full of transcendental qualities. So in the transcendental world, there's nothing contradictory, whereas in the relative world, everything has its opposite. In the relative world, white is the opposite conception of black, but in the transcendental world, there's no distinction between white and black. Therefore, the sounds of benedictions uttered by the learned Brahmas here and there appear to be contradictory in relation with the absolute person. But when they are applied to the supreme absolute person, they lose all contradiction and become transcendental. And an example of this is we glorify Krishna as a thief, right? Makanchor. And he's famous for this. And yeah, you take great pleasure in reading the Damodar story. But if someone was to steal in this world, they would get punished, right? And so since Krishna is the absolute personality of Godhead, everything is applicable to him. And still, in spite of all contradictions, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. And there's a beautiful prayer glorifying Krishna as a thief. It's the Chaurashakam, and we sing this during the Kartik month, or yeah, we sing this in Kartik. That's a really nice prayer. So now in verses 20 to 31, the Hastinapur ladies discuss about the Lord's glories. So there's pleasing talks. The talks of the cruel woman, fully absorbed in Krishna, were attractive to everyone's ears and minds, more attractive than the Vedic hymns. Anyoyam asitsam jalpa uttama sloka chetasam guravendra purash shrinam sarva shruti manoharaha. So the Shrutis, the Vedas and the Upanishads, sometimes indirectly glorify the Lord, but the talks of the Hastinapur ladies are directly glorifying the Lord and thus more pleasing to the heart. This is as the goal of all Vedic literatures is to glorify Krishna. And so similarly, the songs by our great acharyas like Narottam Das Thakur is approved to be as good as Vedic mantras because they glorify Krishna directly. So, and then in verse 21, it establishes Lord Krishna as the original Purusha, who alone existed before creation, and to him all the jivas merge after annihilation. So why am I in this material world, and how do I get out of it? So we're actually all parts and parcels of Krishna. And there's two varieties. There's the Nitya Mukta and the Nitya Baddha. And the Nitya Mukta is eternally liberated souls. And we engage in, eternally in the transcendental loving service with the Lord in its eternal abode. But then there's the Nitya Bhakta, Nitya Baddha, or eternal conditioned soul. And they're entrusted to Krishna's external energy, Maya, but for the rectification of the rebellious attitude towards the Supreme Father. So that's us, basically. So we're forgetful of our relationship with Krishna, and therefore we're bewildered by the illusionary energy as products of matter, and thus are very busy in making plans in the material world to become happy. So we always try and run after happiness, but happiness in this material world is never permanent, because the nature of this world is dukkalayam ashashvatam. It's miserable and it's temporary. Actually, we have no material names or forms, but in order to fulfill our desires, to lord it over the material nature or material forms and names, we are given a chance for such false enjoyment. And at the same time, we are given a chance to understand the real position through revealed scriptures. So scriptures supply the clue for understanding the real position. So it's important that we seriously study the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, and live life in line with the Bhagavad Gita if you want to be free from the clutches of Maya and the vicious cycle of birth and death. So verse 21 also establishes Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the two types of dissolution of the manifested cosmos. So at the end of every 4,320 million solar years, when Brahma, the Lord of one particular universe, goes to sleep, there's one annihilation. And at the end of Lord Brahma's life, which takes place at the end of Brahma's 100 years of age, in our calculation, that is 8,640 million times 30 times 12 times 100 solar years, there's complete annihilation of the entire universe. And in both periods, both the material energy called the Mahatattva and the marginal energy called the Jiva Tattva merge in the person of the Supreme Lord. The living beings remain asleep within the body of the Lord until there's another creation of the material world, and that is the way of creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material manifestation. The material creation is affected by the interaction of the three modes of material nature set in action by the Lord, and therefore it is said that the Lord existed before the modes of material nature were set in motion. So the Mahavishnu is the plenary portion of Lord Sri Krishna. It's mentioned in the Brahma Samhita, chapter 8, verse 48 as follows. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the original personality of Godhead, Govinda. His plenary portion is the Mahavishnu. All the Brahmanas, the heads of the universes, live for the period of his exhaling. After the universes are generated from the pores of his transcendental body. So Krishna, Govinda, or Krishna, is a cause of Mahavishnu also. And the merging of the living beings into the body of Mahavishnu takes place automatically at the end of Brahma's 100 years. But still, we don't lose our individual identity. And the identity is there, and after creation, by the will of Krishna, we again come back to this material world. Just like when you go to sleep, we forget our activities. But in the waking state, we suddenly remember what you have to do. So like this, we remain in the body of Mahavishnu when destruction takes place, annihilation. But as soon as there's another creation, we rise to take up to unfinished work. And Krishna is not a product of the material energy as well. So this diagram, mindful of time. So maybe this is for your information. So from Krishna, very quickly, from Krishna comes Balaram. From Balaram comes Chatur Vayu, which is Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, from which comes an expansion of Lord Narayan. From Sankarshan comes an expansion of Lord Narayan. And then there's a second Chatur Vayu, which is Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. And then from Sankarshan comes the Purusha avatar, Karana Daksha Vishnu. He lies in the causal ocean, and when he breathes, he creates these universes. And within each universe, there's Garbo Daksha Vishnu, from the lotus, the navel of, from his navel comes a lotus stem, which has the earthly, the heavenly, and the hellish planets in the stem, and then on top of that is Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma then performs austerities. Initially, he's trying to create this universe with his own power, but then he realizes it's not possible. Then he hears this word tapa, 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 and then after and then he hears Krishna's flute, and then the knowledge of creation. Through Krishna's flute, he gets the knowledge of creation, and then the world is created, and within this world, all of us have the Paramatma feature, which is Shirodaksha Vishnu, and within every atom of this universe, the Shirodaksha Vishnu as well. And then the expansions of the Leela avatars, the Guna avatars, the Satyaveshna avatars, the Yuga avatars, and then the Manvantaras. You don't really have time to go through this, but so the only way to fulfill Krishna, the only way to fully understand Krishna is the pure devotional service. So it's only the great devotees of the Lord who are able to clear their mind of all material dust by rigid devotional service, and in that way we could experience Krishna as he is. Krishna is known as Jitendriya, which means one who has full control over the senses. And we cannot check our senses by artificial means, actually. So instead, what do we do? So when the senses are engaged in more attractive activities, there's no chance of their being attracted to any inferior engagements. So the senses can be controlled by better engagements. Devotional service necessitates purifying the senses or engaging them in the activities of devotional service. Devotional service is not inaction, and anything done in the service of the Lord at once becomes purified of material nature. And it's only by devotional service that knowledge of the scriptures becomes revealed in the heart. And And therefore, the easiest way to understand Krishna is controlling the senses by devotional service. Performing devotional service, sorry. And so in verses 24, his excellent pastimes, Krishna's excellent pastimes are described in the confidential parts of Vedic literature by his great devotees in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And again, it talks about how he creates and highlights and manifests this world. So in verses 25, it describes that when there are irresponsible kings ruling by adharma, living in the lowest modes of existence, Krishna manifests his transcendental forms as necessary for the age. In this way, he displays his supreme power, truth, pleasing words, mercy, and wonderful activities. And Krishna is supremely praiseworthy. So how naturally the Yadu dynasty is glorified in verses 26, and the Mathura is described to be virtuous. Because Krishna, the supreme leader of all beings, Shriyapati, took his birth and wandered and is shrouded there. And actually, Krishna's birth is not material. His birth is like the appearance and disappearance of the sun. The sun arises in the eastern horizon, but that does not mean the eastern horizon is the parent of the sun. The sun is existent in every part of the solar system, becomes visible at a scheduled time, and also becomes invisible at another scheduled time. Similarly, the Lord appears in this universe like the sun, and again leaves us sight at another time. He exists at all times and at every place, but by his causeless mercy, when he appears before us, we take it for granted that he has taken birth. Anyone who could understand this truth in terms of the statements revealed by the scriptures certainly becomes liberated just after quitting his body. So Krishna takes birth in the Yadu dynasty and is the son of King Vasudeva, and is then transferred into the family of Nanda Maharaj, the land of Mathura, and all transcendental arrangements are made by the eternal potency of the Lord, Yoga Maya. So the Yadu dynasty is very fortunate. And the glories, how fortunate they are, cannot be underestimated. So simply by knowing the transcendental nature of his birth and activities, one could get liberation easily. Just imagine what is in store for those who actually enjoy the company of the Lord in person as a family member or as a neighbor. So those who associate with the Lord personally achieve more than liberation. So therefore, rightly, the dynasty and the land are both ever glorious by the grace of Lord Krishna. And it's described that Dwarka is more glorious than the heavens and enhances the fame of the earth because its inhabitants constantly see Krishna and his loving feature, who glances at them with sweet smiles. So the heavens may be nice, and we might want to go there, but it's also temporary. Whereas facilities in the spiritual world are permanent. So you get all the material, you're such a Dhananda. Everybody is eternally blissful, knowledgeable, and it's just because we're in a constitutional position at service of Krishna. In the spiritual world, we're happy. So I'll summarize that actually. So Dwarka is certainly more important than the heavenly planets, because whoever has been favored with the smiling glance of the Lord shall never come back again to this rotten earth, which is certified by the Lord himself as a place of misery. So if we engage in devotional service in Dwarka, Mathura, or Vrindavan, which is recommended, if we follow the scriptures, we'll surely achieve the same result as that obtained during the presence of Lord Krishna. His abode and he himself are identical, and a pure devotee under the guidance of another experienced devotee can obtain all the results, even at present. And actually, so the wives of Lord Krishna, it describes how must have performed vows, obeyed fire sacrifices, and perfect worship of Krishna to now relish the nectar of his lips. The most glorious Vraja Gopis would often faint just by expecting such favors. So the wives of, in verses 29 and 30 describes how Krishna got married to his wives. So Rukmini, Satyabhama, and Jambavati were forcibly taken from the Shyamvallabhha ceremonies by Krishna after he defeated many powerful kings like Shishupal. And after killing Bhaumasura, he accepted many wives, who all became glorious by the lotus-eyed husband, who pleased them with valuable gifts and never left their houses. So the 16,100 beautiful girls were the daughters of many kings and were forcibly stolen by Bhaumasura. He kept them captivated for his own carnal desire. These girls prayed piteously to the Lord for deliverance, and the merciful Lord, called by the fervent prayer, released them all by fighting and killing Bhaumasura. All these captivated princes were then accepted by the Lord as his wives, although in estimation of society they were all fallen girls. The all-powerful Lord Krishna accepted the humble prayers of these girls and married them with the adoration of queens. So altogether, Krishna had 16,108 queens at Dwarka, and in each of them he begot 10 children. All these children grew up, and each had many children as the father. The aggregate of the family number was in the millions. And it's amazing how Krishna can we maintain one family relationship? Isn't it hard to keep one relation good? But Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He could keep 16,108 wives and all his sons happy. And every one of these husbands was the Lord himself. So Krishna could expand himself into many. And he pleased all his wives with presentations, even at costly endeavor. And he even brought the Parijita flower from heaven and planted it at the palace of Satyabhama, one of the principal queens. So if therefore anyone desires the Lord to become one's husband, the Lord fulfills such desires in full. And then the Lord reciprocates with the ladies. While the ladies were talking in this way, the Lord accepted the greetings and smilingly glancing departed. So what is the purpose of performing religious rites prescribed in the scriptures? It's actually, the purpose is to purify our mundane qualities and then to enable us to be gradually promoted to the stage of rendering transcendental service unto the Supreme Lord. An attainment of this pure spiritual life is the highest perfection, and this stage is called Swarupa, or the factual identity of the living being. And liberation means renovation of the stage of Swarupa. And in this perfect stage of Swarupa, we establish 5 phases of loving service: Santaras, Sakyaras, Dasyaras, which is 7, Vatsalyaras, parenthood, or Madhuryaras, or conjugal love, or the humor of conjugal love. But the Lord is always perfect in himself, and thus he has no hankering for himself. He however becomes a master, a friend, a son, or a husband to fulfill the intense love of the devotee concerned. So in Krishna Leela, there are actually 2 devotees of the Lord mentioned in conjugal love. One is Swakya and the other is Parakya. Both of them are in conjugal love with the personality of Godhead. So the queens of Dwarka were Swakya, or duly married wives, but the damsels of Raja were young friends of the Lord while he was unmarried. The Lord stayed at Vrindavan till the age of 16, and his friendly relations with the neighboring girls were in terms of parakia. These girls, as well as the queens, underwent severe penances by taking vows, bathing and offering sacrifice in the fire, as prescribed in the scriptures. The rites, as they are not an end in themselves, nor are fruit of action, culture of knowledge, or perfection in mystic power, ends in themselves. They are all means to attain the highest stage of Swarup, to render constitutional transcendental service to the Lord. So actually this Swakiya and Parakiya conjugal love of Godhead have no existence in this material world. And Parakiya is not exhibited anywhere in Vaikuntha, but only in the proportion of Golok Vrindavan, known as Raja. This is as the material world is a perfected reflection of the spiritual world. So that means that the love in the spiritual world is mainly lust in the material world. So actually the highest thing in the spiritual is the lowest thing in the material world. And actually, philosophically, the gopis were actually married to Krishna. They performed the Katyani Vrat for a month as a desire to have Krishna as their husband, and Krishna fulfilled this desire after stealing the garments of the unmarried gopis. And there's a pastime for this, which I could share on the group. So other acharyas also explain that when the Brahma Vimol Leela was going on, Krishna had expanded as the Gopas and Yogamaya came and said, now it's time that all the gopis get married. So all the gopis were married to the various gopas, and all of these gopas were actually Krishna. So in this sense, Krishna was already married to the gopis when he was performing the Rasa Leela. So, and Brahma himself performed the marriage of Radha and Krishna. So now, the last few verses, the Lord then departs and proceeds towards Dwarka. And so in verses 32, Yudhishthira Maharaj, out of affection, arranged for 4 divisions of defenses for the Lord, which is horse, elephant, chariot, and army, to accompany Lord Krishna. Even though Krishna was self-sufficient in himself, he arranged this out of love for Krishna, as explained in the purport. So if Krishna never comes under illusion, how does Yoga Maya bring Krishna under illusion? I just thought this was interesting. So the Lord takes shelter of Yoga Maya. If we consider Krishna Leela to be like a drama, this doesn't mean it's not reality. It is supreme reality. It is all enacted for the purpose of reciprocation of love and the performance of loving exchanges. In this way, we could say that Krishna is the central actor in the drama, and all the other Vrajvasis are like the actors, and Yoga Maya is like the director. The actors, no matter how talented they are, much more well known than directors. In most cases, but they are acting according to the directions of the director though. So when Krishna took shelter of Yoga Maya, Krishna acted like the actor and Yoga Maya the director, as Krishna wanted to have loving reciprocations with the Vrajvasis, and so he took shelter of Yoga Maya to engage in pastimes. When Krishna runs away in fear from Mother Yashoda, therefore, he's actually fearful. He's not just acting. Of course, he could come out of that fear whenever he wants, because that is his supremacy. So how is this? Krishna is there, is the actor, and Yoga Maya is the director. But then the director is not directly independent, but as per a script written by the script writer. This script writer is Krishna himself. This means that Krishna is simultaneously in control and not in control, as in a sense, the whole direction is happening by the script. So that in that sense, he is in control. But when he is acting in the role according to the script, at that time, he so much enters into the role that he completely forgets that he's God, and the Vrajvasis forget this as well. That forgetfulness is not because of ignorance, but because of transcendence, and to enhance the loving reciprocations between Krishna and his devotees. So then Krishna, so the residents of Hastinapur see Krishna all, overwhelmed by intimate separation. The Pandavas accompany Lord Krishna for a considerable distance, and then Krishna has to persuade them to return back whilst he proceeds to Dwarka with his companions. And then finally, the Lord passes through various provinces like Kurujangala, Panchala, Surasena, the land on the bank of the river Yamuna, Brahmavarta, Kurukshetra, Matsya, Saraswata, the province of the desert, and the land old scanty. After crossing these provinces, he gradually reaches the Saurava and Abhira provinces. Then west of these, he reaches Dwarka at last. And then he's welcomed and given various presentations. And then he performs evening rites. And he performs evening rites. Why? Because he's setting an example of what we should do. So we must, when we preach, essentially, we must always lead by example. And Krishna demonstrates this. So I will share the slides, but I'm mindful that we've gone over time. So does anyone have any questions, or stop sharing?